Hello, precious students. I welcome you to our SHS2 Core Mathematics program brought to you by the Center for National Distance Learning and Open Schooling. My name is Gershon. The topic for my presentation today is percentages 2. It is our first lesson on percentages in SHS2. This lesson is divided into two parts. The first is compound interest, and the second is depreciation. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to calculate the compound interest of any given amount for a given period. You should also be able to calculate the depreciation of an item for a given period. And also, you should be able to determine the value of an item or an amount after a given period. In SHS1, you treated the topic percentages 1, where you considered, among other things, simple interest, discount, commission, hire purchase, and so on. We shall continue with our lessons in percentages. Usually, investors receive interest on the principal invested for a period. The agreement between the investors, that is the owners of the money, and the bank or any other financial institution, can be that the money is kept for a period, sometimes more than 1 year, where the principal is unchanged, and then receive an interest at the end of the period. This interest is referred to as simple interest. Sometimes the agreement between the investors and the bank can be that interest is earned in each period, usually 1 year, and added to the principal of the previous period to become the principal for the next period or year. This is repeated year after year. And when this happens, we say the investment is made at compound interest. Here, the principal is not fixed, but it keeps changing period after period. In short, when interest is added to the principal, it is called a compound interest. Compound interest is used extensively in many areas of business and finance, such as treasury bills, fixed deposits, pension plans, mortgage loans, and so on. To obtain the interest or total amount after the period of investment, there are two approaches or methods that we can use. Method 1, we call this periodic or annual calculations. This is actually done by going through the following steps. You first have to calculate the interest for year 1 on the principal or the initial amount. And then you add it to the principal to get the total amount for year 1. The next thing you have to do is to calculate the interest for year 2 on the total amount for year 1. Then you add it to the total amount for year 1 to get the total amount for year 2. You then have to calculate the interest for year 3 on the total amount for year 2. Then you add it to the total amount for year 2 to obtain the total amount for year 3. We continue this process till the last year that is given in the question. Then the last year amount is the total investment at the end of that period. And the difference between the total investment and the principal or the initial amount is the total interest for the period. A good example of compound interest calculation is illustrated here. Mr. Joseph Dazi, an investor, deposited 650 Ghana cedis with UTP Bank for 4 years at an annual compound interest rate of 5%. Calculate the total amount and interest earned at the end of the period. Now, from the question, we are given the principal or the initial amount as 650 Ghana cedis. And the rate is 5%, which is equal to 5 over 100. The period or the time is 4 years. What you have to do here is to calculate the interest, the year after year, and so on till we get to the last year. So for year 1, the interest is equal to 650 times 5 over 100. And that will give us 32.5 Ghana cedis. Then we have to calculate the year 1 amount. And that is the principal plus the interest. So that is 650 plus 32.5, which is equal to 682.5 Ghana cedis. Now let's calculate the interest for year 2. And this will be equal to the total amount at the end of year 1 times the rate. And so that is equal to 682.5 times 5 over 100, which is equal to 34.13. So the year 2 amount will be equal to 682.5 plus 34.13, which is equal to 716.63 Ghana cedis. And this represents the total amount at the end of year 2. Now, in order to calculate for year 3 interest, we have to use the total amount at the end of year 2 and multiply it by its rate. And that will give us year 3 interest. And that is 716.63 times 5 over 100, which is equal to 35.83 Ghana cedis. Now, for year 3 amount, we have 716.63 plus 35.83, which is equal to 752.46. And this represents the total amount at the end of year 3. Lovely. Shall we try year 4 interest? This is equal to the total amount at the end of year 3 times the rate. And so that will give us 752.46 times 5 over 100, which is equal to 37.62 Ghana cedis. Now we have to find the amount at the end of year 4. And so that is going to be 752.46 Ghana cedis plus 37.62 Ghana cedis. And that will be equal to 790.08 Ghana cedis. Therefore, the total amount earned will be equal to 790.08 Ghana cedis. We can also calculate the total interest by subtracting the principal amount, which is the initial amount, from the total amount at the end of the 4 year. And that will be equal to 790.08 Ghana cedis minus 650 Ghana cedis. And that will give us 140.08 Ghana cedis. In other words, 140 Ghana cedis, 0.08 pesos. Another way to find the total interest is to add all the interest for the various years, which is total interest earned. And that will give us 32.5, the first interest we calculated, plus 34.13, the second interest, plus 35.83, the third interest, and then finally plus 37.62, which is the interest for year 4. And that will give us 140.08 Ghana cedis. Well, that was lovely. Now, Remember, we said there are two methods. So let's take a look at the second method, which involves using a formula. The formula for calculating the total amount, A, of a principal invested, P, at a compound interest rate, R%, for a period N, is given by A is equal to P. Then into bracket we have 1 plus R over 100 exponent N. So the interest is equal to amount minus the principal. Let's try the same question with the formula. Mr. Darcy, an investor, deposited 650 Ghana cedis with UTP Bank for 4 years at an annual compound interest rate of 5%. Calculate the total amount and interest earned at the end of the period. So from the question, we are given P is equal to 650 Ghana cedis. The rate R is equal to 5%. So let's try and solve this using the formula. From the question, we are given P is equal to 650 Ghana cedis, R is equal to 5%, and N is equal to 4 years. We now have to substitute these values into the formula. So we have A is equal to 650 for P. Then in bracket, we have 1 plus 5 over 100, or raised to the power 4. So you can try this with your calculator. And this will give you the amount equals to 790.08 Ghana cedis, which is very simple and easy. Now for the interest, we have interest equals to amount minus the principal. And the amount is 790.08 Ghana cedis. And the principal, which is the initial amount, is 650 Ghana cedis. So 790.08 minus 650 will give us 140.08 Ghana cedis. So you can see that if you use the formula, you get the same result as the first method. Let's consider another example. Mrs. Nelson, a financial consultant to a contractor of a building project in Kaduna, advised management to invest £225 into treasury bills for 9 months at a rate of 27.5% per annum, payable quarterly. Estimate the amount at the end of the 9 months and estimate the total interest earned at the end of the 9 months. Let's solve this using the first method. From the question, the principal amount is £225. The rate is equal to 27.5%, which is equal to 27.5 over 4. And that is equal to 6.875% per quarter. Remember, we are changing the rate from annual to quarter. And so N is equal to 9 months from the question. We have to change the 9 months to quarters. And that will give us 9 divided by 12. Remember, we have 12 months in a year times 4, which is equal to 3 quarters. Now let us calculate the interest. The interest for the first quarter will be equal to 225 times 6.875 over 100. Remember, that is the rate. And that will give us 15.47 pounds. Now we have to calculate the amount for the first quarter. And this is done by adding the interest to the principal amount. And so we have 225 plus 15.47, and that will give us 240.47 pounds. We have to calculate the interest for the second quarter too, and that is given by 240.47 times the rate, which is 6.875 over 100, and that will give us 16.53 pounds. I hope it's going well so far. Now we have to calculate the amount for the second quarter. So the amount for the second quarter is 240.47 plus 16.53, which is equal to 257 pounds. Now remember, that represents the amount at the end of the second quarter. Now we have to go to the third quarter and calculate the interest. And so this interest for the third quarter will be equal to 257 times 0.06875. That's the rate. And solving, this will give us 17.67 pounds. After this, we have to calculate the amount for the third quarter. Remember, the amount is to add the interest to the amount at the end of the second quarter. So amount for the third quarter is equal to 257 plus 17.67, and that will give us 274.67 pounds. So the total amount earned is equal to 274.67 pounds. Nice one. Now, after calculating the amount, we are also asked to find the interest earned. So how do we calculate the interest? We said the interest is equal to the amount minus the initial principal. So we have the total amount, which is 274.67 minus 225, and that is equal to 49.67 pounds. But I want to remind you that we can also add all the interest for the various years. And if you do that, you get 15.47 plus 16.53 plus 17.67, which is equal to 49.67, which will give you the same result as adding or subtracting the principal from the total amount. I am sure you would like to try the second method yourself. That's the formula. Since we know the principal, we also know the rate and the year, we can easily substitute this into the formula, which is A equals to P, then into bracket we have 1 plus R over 100 raised to the power n. And that will give us A, which is the amount, equals to 225. Then in bracket, we have 1 plus 6.875 divided by 100. All this raised to the power 3. So when you use your calculator to solve, you will get 274.67 pounds. Remember, we said to find the interest, we have the amount minus the principal. So that will give us 274.67 minus 225, and that will give us 49.67, which is the same as the first method. Let me also remind you once again that you should use only one method in solving the problem. Use the method that you are comfortable with. In mathematics, we have many ways of solving a particular question, but it's up to you to use the method that you are comfortable with. Nice. Now, I want us to move on to the second part of the topic. Remember, I told you there are two things we'll be looking at in this lesson. The first part is compound interest, and the second is depreciation. So let's move on to depreciation. Depreciation is a term used in describing the extent of the usage of fixed assets such as building, plant, machinery, equipment, cell phone, furniture, and so on. As a result of the usage of these items year after year, they lose their original value over the period. The decrease in value of the asset is called depreciation. Let me give you this scenario. If your father bought a Mercedes-Benz 4 years ago at £23,000, this car will not value the same amount now as a result of the usage, because there might be some wear and tear which will naturally reduce the original value of the Mercedes-Benz now. In the same way, if you buy a cell phone today, in a year's time, the value of the cell phone may reduce due to how you have used it. If you have decided to sell it in 2 years' time, you will have to sell it at a reduced price. This reduction in price as a result of the usage of the item is what we call depreciation. Depreciation is calculated in a similar manner as we do for compound interest. But here, the depreciated amount is subtracted from the current amount to get the new value of the item. We can also use the formula, but instead we subtract the rate from 1. Then the present value of the item will be given by A, which is the amount, equals to P. Then into bracket 1 minus R over 100 raised to the power N. A is the new value of the item. P is the original value of the item. And R is the rate of depreciation. And then also N is the number of years the item depreciated. Shall we take a look at this example? Mr. Evans Injum bought a mobile phone for 2,560 Ghana cedis. Per the usage of the phone, he decided to depreciate it at a rate of 12% per annum. Calculate the value of the cell phone after 1 year and after 2 years. Now, what we have to do here is to use the first method, where we calculate the depreciation and then subtract from the previous value for the new value. From the question, we are given the principal, which is P, equals to 2,560 Ghana cedis. And the rate is equal to 12%. So for the first part of the question, at the end of year 1, depreciation will be equal to 2,560 times 12 over 100. And that will give us 307.2 Ghana cedis. Then the amount will be equal to 2,560 minus 307.2, which is equal to 2,252.8 Ghana cedis. The value of the mobile phone, therefore, after 1 year will be equal to 2,252.80 Ghana cedis. Shall we take a look at the second part? The value of the phone at the beginning of the second year will be equal to 2,252.80. Then at the end of year 2, the depreciation will be equal to 2,252.80 times the rate, which is 12 over 100. And that will give you 270.34 Ghana cedis. We have to calculate the amount now at the end of year 2. And that will give us 2,252.80 minus 270.34. And that will give you 1,982.46 Ghana cedi. Therefore, the value of the mobile phone at the end of year 2 is 1,982.46 Ghana cedis. Shall we make use of the second formula, which is very simple? The formula, which is A equals to P, then in bracket we have 1 minus R over 100 raised to the power N. We know the P from the question is 2,560 Ghana cedis. The R is 12%. And so at the end of the first year, N is equal to 1. So if you put this into the formula, we have A equals to 2,560 times, in bracket 1 minus 12 over 100 raised to the power 1. Now, if you use your calculator to solve this, you will get 2,252.80 Ghana cedis. So the value of the mobile phone after 1 year is equal to 2,252.80 Ghana cedis. The second part, at the end of year 2, in this case, N equals to 2. So replacing N with 2, we have A is equal to 2,560 times, let's have bracket 1 minus 12 over 100 raised to the power 2. And that will give us 1,982.46 Ghana cedis. So therefore, the value of the mobile phone at the end of year 2 is equal to 1,982.46 Ghana cedis. Lovely. Let's take another example to help us understand depreciation better. Bremen Jamra Farmers Union depreciate their vehicles at a rate of 17.25% per annum. A vehicle costing 567,340 Ghana cedis was purchased on 1st January 2012. Determine the value of the vehicle on 31st December 2015. Now, from the question, we are given the principal amount, which is 567,340 Ghana cedis. The rate is 17.25%. And from 1st January 2012 to 31st December 2015, we have 4 years there. So at the end of 2012, depreciation will equal to 567,340 times the rate, which is 17.25 divided by 100. If you use your calculator to solve this, you will get 97,866.15 Ghana cedis. Therefore, the value of the vehicle at the end of 2012 is 567,340 minus 97,866.15, and that will give you 469,473.85 Ghana cedis. Now, the value of the vehicle at the beginning of 2013 will give us 469,473.85 Ghana cedis. Then the depreciation will be equal to 469,473.85 times the rate, which is 17.25 over 100. And that will give you 80,984.24 Ghana cedis. Now, the value of the vehicle at the end of 2013 is given by 469,473.85 minus 80,984.24, which is equal to 388,489.61 Ghana cedis. So the value of the vehicle at the beginning of 2014 is 388,489.61. So the depreciation will equal to 388,489.61 times 17.25 over 100, which is equal to 67,014.46 Ghana cedis. So you can see that the values are decreasing, and that is enough to tell you what we describe depreciation to be. That is the value of an item reducing. Now, the value of the vehicle at the beginning of 2015 is 321,475.15 Ghana cedis. So the depreciation is equal to 321,475.15 times the rate, which is 17.25 over 100. And that will give us 55,454.46 Ghana cedis. Therefore, the value of the vehicle at the end of 2015 is given by 321,475.15 minus 55,454.46, and this will give us 266,020.69 Ghana cedis. Oh, that was quite lengthy. So, as we said, there are two ways of solving this question. Let us use the formula to try the same question. Probably the formula will be easier for you and you like to use it. So what we are going to do is to substitute the values into the formula for depreciation. And we have A is equal to P, then into bracket 1 minus R over 100 raised to the power N. From the question, we are given the principal amount, which is 567,340, and the rate is 17.25%. Now, at the end of 2015, N, which is the period, or the number of years, is equal to 4. And so, substituting, we have A is equal to 567,340 times, so let's have into bracket 1 minus 17.25 over 100 raised to the power 4. So, using calculator to solve this, we will get 266,020.69 Ghana cedis. Therefore, the value of the vehicle on 31st December 2015 is 266,020.69 Ghana cedis. That is very good. Well, we have to end it here. Please do try more questions from your notes. So we have learned that under compound interest, the interest is calculated year after year until the end of the period. We also said that we add the interest for the current year to the current amount in order to arrive at the amount for the next year. The formula for calculating the current amount is given by A is equal to P times 1 plus R over 100 raised to the power n. We also said the formula for calculating the interest at the end of a period is given by I, which is the interest, is equal to the amount minus the principal. You can also use an alternative method as shown. Under depreciation, we said the new value is calculated by subtracting the depreciated amount from the current amount. And we also look at a formula for calculating the present value of a depreciated item. And we said that is equal to P outside the bracket, 1 minus R over 100 raised to the power n. Wow! Well, precious students, we have come to the end of today's lesson. In our next lesson on percentages, we shall learn how people come together to form a business. We call this financial partnership. I hope you will keep practicing a lot more questions on compound interest and depreciation. Join us again for the next lesson. Till then, goodbye.